Hello, hello, and welcome back.
Hello. Good to see you again, Anne.
Great to see you. Long time no see, darling.
I
We've been
know
together 24/7 for the past few days, which is such a treat.
it is always a good time.
So much fun. So, welcome back, everyone, to Living Richly with Curo. This is episode number 31. We are so happy to have you back for another episode this week. My name is Anne McCabe. I am the CEO and a partner here at Curo Private Wealth, and I'm joined, as always, by my lovely partner, Teresa.
Hello. I am Teresa Roberts, COO and partner here at Curo. Thanks for joining us.
Yes, awesome to have you. So, as a reminder, our goal here is always to inspire, to educate, to empower you on your financial journey. And today's episode is no different than every week's. This week, we actually have a question from a listener, which we are super excited to
Yay.
answer. And yeah, it's about risk management. So, we will get into that topic. But as we always love to do, we like to do a little A team catch up. So I know what's new and exciting in your life, but the listeners don't. So why don't we fill them in on the shenanigans we've been up to recently?
Oh, wow. So Anne and I had, I will say, the pleasure of attending a leadership development retreat with our partner, Blue Spring Wealth Partners, who, if you are a client of our firm, you're familiar with. But Blue Spring is our I would call them our corporate partner. They assist us in practice management, and they always put together really nice events where the partners of firms can come together. I always say the best part of it is the idea share, right? Meeting with other firms, hearing what they're doing, hearing what their challenges are, and helping one another troubleshoot those things. So Ann and I have been in Austin this week for 2.5 packed days of content and information, but always valuable and meaningful. And of course, it's always nice for Anne and I to be able to be away from the office and really be able to turn off the advisor brain, which we live in a lot of the time, and turn on that entrepreneurial, strategic planning, visionary brain, right? To think about what things you can be doing better for your firm and for your clients. So really great experience, but I'm tired. And, and then, you always come back with that, like, oh my God, we got so much to do.
Yes, exactly. It's always a little half inspiring, half overwhelming because you do
Right.
get these great ideas from people. But then I was joking with the team this morning during our huddle that they should always be worried when I'm away at a conference because I come back with like 25 million things I need us to implement tomorrow. So, yeah, I think the trick is to almost like have a, running list of all the things that we
Yes.
do want to be able to do, but also prioritize like what are the most important things that we need to start implementing right away. And we did this really cool self-assessment. So our partner company had, it was like 2 pages, I think, of different questions where
Hmm.
you assess how you're doing in the firm, broken down into different categories. And I think that was a really powerful exercise and just a reminder that I think we do a lot of things really well. And I think there are still so many areas where we can improve even more. So great exercise to do in November, the end of the year, getting ready for strategic planning, which we've been talking about. We've, been doing even for the past couple of months in preparation for 2025. But that was a really awesome exercise too. And then, of course, we heard from this amazing speaker who is the president of a university in Dallas, Texas, and just what an incredible story. He took over a university that was like months away from failing, and just the super creative strategies that he thought of for the university.
Hmm.
Some big bold decisions that he made that were not super popular, like he got
Right.
rid of the football team, which is never a popular thing to do in a university, but he was like, "Oh, we were about to go out of business." So that was just an awesome, awesome speaker too. So it was a great conference.
Yeah, and I have to plug that we also had a fun activity, an afternoon of go-kart racing at Circuit of the Americas. And for all my other Formula One and racing fans out there, that was really exciting to be out there. I mean, we obviously weren't racing go-karts on the track, but it was just fun to be there. And I actually snuck in. There was a racing school taking place. So people were doing actual lessons on the circuit. So I got to kind of peek in on that for about 5 or 10 minutes, which is pretty cool. So yeah, I'll plug that as well. That was also a very good highlight of the trip for me.
Yeah, we're gonna pop in a picture of us with our helmets on, go-karting right in front of the Coda sign. So
Yeah.
yeah, that was super fun. All right, well, let's get into our topic today. And today's topic and question comes from Trevin. So thank you and shout out to Trevin for sending in this question. And he asked, what other method is important in risk management apart from diversification? So, what a great question,
Mm-hmm.
because often when we're talking about portfolio management, the idea of diversification comes up a lot, but there are so many other things too that we need to consider from a risk management standpoint when we're talking about investing. So we promise we will talk about other things aside from diversification, but we're going to actually kick it off with diversification.
There's no way you start a conversation about risk management without a mention of diversification.
Exactly. The golden rule of investing. And, when you think about diversification, the idea here is you want to spread your risk among different asset classes, but also different industries, different geographies. You don't want to just be invested in the US, for example. And the idea here is that if you spread the risk amongst different sectors of the market, different geographies, that chances are not every single one of those positions is both going to go up at the same time and importantly going to be coming down at the same time. Now, there are exceptions. Like if you look back at 2022, their diversification didn't really work in that year,
Right.
right? Stocks were down, bonds were down, pretty much everything with the exception of commodities were down in that year. But for the most part, over the long run, diversification is a smart strategy to implement. And we just want to comment too on the idea of diversification, because oftentimes people will come to meet with us and we'll take a look at their portfolios and they will have 5, 7 different mutual funds or exchange traded funds, ETFs. But when we look at the underlying holdings of these funds, they think they're diversified because they don't just have one fund in their account. But we like peel back the onion and look under the hood a little bit, and they're all like large cap growth funds or large cap, blend
Right.
ETFs. And we're like, you have 5 funds, but if you look at actually what you're invested in, there is zero diversification here. So when we talk portfolio diversification, both in stocks and bonds and just asset classes in general, we're talking, some large cap, we're talking some mid-size, some small size companies, a blend of domestic and international exposure, even amongst the bonds that you own in your
Mm-hmm.
portfolio. You can be talking about corporate bonds, you can be talking about treasuries, international bonds, even strategic income funds, which have a really diversified basket of bonds inside of them. So, just a note on the diversification, because you may think you're diversified, but it's really important to kind of dig in and make sure that you are actually diversified.
Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes because you're using different managers, it doesn't mean that those managers are not all doing the same thing or owning the same companies. So paying attention to that, I think, is a really, like, if I'm double clicking on a point, it's that, because just owning various numbers of investments does not necessarily translate to diversification.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. So the other thing we want you to think about with diversification is to understand you and your family's capacity and willingness to take on risk. And this process involves understanding and identifying and prioritizing your financial goals. And very importantly, identifying your time horizon. So when we're talking about investing, it is super important to invest in line with your time horizon. And what I mean by that is if you are working and investing towards a goal, let's say you'd like to buy your first home or a second property in 5 years, that is a relatively short period of time
Mm-hmm.
from an investing standpoint. And you want to allocate your portfolio in line with that shorter time horizon. Now, if we're talking about retirement and retirement is decades in the future for you, that is a longer time
Right.
horizon. And so you can afford to allocate differently. And so we'll have with one client or a client couple, we will sometimes have different portfolios with different allocations because they are earmarked for different goals. So I think that time horizon mention is really important. And then the last thing we want you to be aware of is just your comfort level with volatility, right? If you are somebody who, when the market goes down 5, 7, even 10%, which is very normal, if you freak out and you want to, do something crazy like sell and go to cash, you should probably not take on as much risk in your portfolio, right? So we really want to make sure that you're in a portfolio where you will stay committed over the long run, even through the ups and downs, which we know are inevitable in investing.
Yeah, absolutely. And the tolerance of that risk is important because I mean, I know you've had experiences like I have where you talk to a client or an investor and they say, "Oh, I'm comfortable with the risk. I'm super aggressive." And the first time they get a statement that shows even a mild correction, you're getting an email or a phone call like, "Wait, why are things down? What is happening?" And then you realize like, "Wait, you may not be as tolerant of the risk as you thought you were." So there's the risk that we advise and think works best. And then it's also the risk that you can manage and won't keep you up at night. And I think the work we do is finding that middle ground, right? What you need most for growth, and then what you can also tolerate without calling us 3 times a week. And we want to talk to our clients. We love to hear from your clients, but sometimes if they are not tolerant of the risk, it can be a bit much.
Yes, exactly. And we always get nervous when clients all of a sudden want to change their risk tolerance, especially, in a year like 2024 where the S&Ps hit, I don't know, 50 plus all-time highs. It's like, maybe it's not the right time to increase risk in your portfolio. So just also be aware of not trying to chase those returns, and really be honest with yourself about what that tolerance level is.
Absolutely. Okay, so now another method that you can use to help manage risk in your investments is what is called dollar cost averaging, or a DCA. You may hear people refer to it as DCA. And what this involves is investing a fixed amount of money at regular intervals, regardless of the market conditions. So, for example, you may choose to invest $500 every month into your brokerage or retirement account, no matter if the market is on an upswing or in a correction. The beauty of this is that you're able to, one, reduce the emotional decision making around investing. Of course, I think naturally for retail investors, everybody wants to get in when things are going really well, right? Like, oh, the market's up, we should buy more, we should do more. And then I think, as we've mentioned on this podcast before, then when it goes on sale, right, or you see something downswing, you're more reluctant or hesitant to buy it. It's only in investments do people hate a sale. So dollar
Yeah.
cost averaging takes that sort of emotional response to it, because you can be sure that $500 every month in this example is going into your investment account no matter what is happening. It also allows people to be very true to their savings plan and their savings goal, because for many brokerage firms and account custodians, that DCA can be set up on an automated system and process so that you're not even thinking about it. So you're less likely to panic or to overcommit, whether the market is doing really well or going down. But also, as you invest more consistently, you end up buying more shares at lower prices and fewer shares when prices are high. This helps smooths out that effect of volatility, which is what we want. As investors and as advisors, we always let our clients know that the market is not going to go up forever. There are going to be times when you're going to get pullbacks, you're going to get corrections. It's just the natural environment of what we do and where we are when you're investing. But being able to smooth out that ride of the ups and downs, buying in at different values, which is why we call it a dollar cost average, right? You're buying in at an average of a cost. You're able to lower the average cost over time, but then also smooth out that roller coaster ride. Now, this isn't going to guarantee that you're always going to get good performance. You're not going to always turn an investment, or turn a profit, but it is a way to stay very disciplined about your investing and your savings goals over time. One other thing I do want to note, and we did actually talk about this briefly in our episode number 29 about concentrated stock positions, is that another option for managing risk is hedging. So if you are in a situation where you have a concentration in certain stocks or in certain companies, then you can consider options that hedge against that concentrated risk. So you could also consider some sort of insurance product or an annuity product that also helps to hedge against that risk of volatility as well.
Yeah, and just going back to the DCing for one moment, there
Mhm.
is, I think, 6.3 trillion, if I remember the dollar amount correctly, of
As of
that chart
September
that,
30th.
yeah, the chart that we went through in our last market update. So record levels of cash in money markets because interest rates have been really high. So if you are someone who is considering moving some of this cash off the sidelines and investing it, that dollar cost averaging is a great risk management strategy for you to slowly get that cash to work. So instead of dumping, let's say you have a couple extra $100,000 in cash that you really don't need in the next couple of years and you'd like to invest it, instead of dumping that all in one day, you can come up with a DCA plan over the next 3 months, 6 months,
Mhm.
whatever, where you can slowly get that money to work. And then if the market does pull back more than that, you maybe decide to accelerate into that pullback. So I think that's a great strategy, especially if you're considering moving some cash off the sidelines.
Yep, absolutely.
So, next on our list is portfolio rebalancing, which is another great risk management tool, and frankly, a very important tool for long term disciplined investors. So, what happens when you're in a diversified portfolio is some areas of the portfolio are going to perform better than others. Usually, over the long run, if you've got a
Mhm.
combination of stocks and bonds, typically those stocks are going to outperform the bonds. So what happens is, let's say you started with a 60% allocation to stocks, a 40% allocation to bonds. If you let that ride and you do not rebalance, now your 60% is maybe up to 75 or 80. So you inherently have more risk in your portfolio than you originally signed up for. So, the process of rebalancing is periodically peeling back those positions that have done well and are
Mhm.
now a higher percentage versus the original allocation. And you actually peel that down and you put it into the positions that have not gone up as much, or maybe even have gone down. This is a very counterintuitive process. Clients will sometimes say, wait a minute, you're telling us to sell some of our winners and buy some of our, mediocre performers or even losers. And we're like, yep, that's exactly what we're
Yep,
telling
that's what we
you
said.
need to do. Pretty much. Yeah. And so they're like, wait a minute, why wouldn't we just buy more of our winners? Because past performance does not indicate future results. And we have heard so many stories of folks, going into even the tech bubble bursting back in the early 2000s or the great financial crisis and, from 2007 to 2009, where they didn't know, they were not aware of the fact that they had way more stock exposure than they thought and than they originally agreed to. And so when, in the great financial crisis, when the market went down 50+%, they participated with way more of that downturn than they
Mhm.
thought they were going to. So this is a very important discipline. This is something that we obviously do for our clients periodically, but something that we would absolutely recommend you consider as part of your overall risk management strategy.
Yep, absolutely. And I think this year is also a good example of that or a good lesson in that. Because if you think about the first half of the year, when the US stock market was taking off and we were up double digits, but bonds, for example, were mostly flat to slightly negative, except for maybe in the high yield space, many portfolios were probably more overweight to stocks, by the end of the summer than the original allocation intended. Now we got some good bond performance in the third quarter, but those are good examples, right? Where one asset class is on a tear and the other asset class is struggling. And like we mentioned in the diversification, it's important to monitor that allocation or that weighting in your investment. So that constant monitoring of rebalancing in portfolios is very, very important. One of the other ways we manage risk, and we are really big proponents of this here at Curo, is liquidity management. And it's something that's often overlooked when you're talking about risk management, but this tool allows you to maintain liquidity in cash reserves or in an emergency fund that acts as a buffer against unexpected expenses and income disruptions. And it also prevents you from having to dip into long term savings or sell when the market is down in order to meet short term income or expense needs. So I describe us as proactive cash managers. Again, we've talked a lot about our firm and how dedicated and committed we are to financial planning. And one of the sort of foundational tools of planning is managing for emergencies, right? It's one of the first things we even start to recommend when we do strategy planning for clients. It's how much in your non-discretionary expense account, right? How much of that do you have in reserves? Because the last thing you want to do is to have to go into your long-term retirement account or brokerage account, sell something during a correction to meet a very short-term need. So based on your income and expense needs, you make recommendations about how much you should own in cash. I mean, I think that ranges, depending on who you ask, anywhere from 3 months to as high as a year if you're, for example, a self-employed person where income is on a more inconsistent basis. So managing that level of liquidity in your portfolio is a really good way to manage risk. Also, even other than emergencies, for clients or investors who are in the required minimum distribution phase of their investing, where you know that there is a certain amount of money that you're required to pull out in that year. And many times it makes sense to manage that cash on the sidelines rather than, you say, oh, I'll take my distribution in December, and then you go to take it and the market's corrected, 7 or 8%. And now you have to sell to raise that cash there. So we are big proponents of liquidity management, and we think it is a really easy way to manage risk in your investing.
Yeah, this is one of my favorite conversations to have with our clients who are either
Mm-hmm.
very shortly going to retire or in retirement. One of the most common questions we get is, okay, now that I'm going to retire, don't I have to peel back the risk massively in my portfolio, right? Don't I have to get out of the stock market and go into CDs or, maybe dividend paying stocks? And I love when we can answer no, because we do this proactive cash management and what we call a carve out strategy. So we've got, depending upon the client, anywhere from 12 to, in some cases, 18 or even 24 months of their portfolio income needs sitting in cash so that the rest of the portfolio can stay growth oriented, can hopefully beat inflation over time, and you can afford to ride the waves. And as Teresa
Mm-hmm.
mentioned, you're not selling in a down market. So I think that's really important for the clients who are in the distribution phase of their life or getting ready for that. And then also, I think for some younger clients or younger folks who may be listening to this is really important that you don't skip over having a solid cash
Yes.
reserve and go straight into investing. We understand how sexy investing is. We get it. We think it's sexy too. We love it. Obviously, this is what we do for a living. But you do not want to be in a situation where you skip over that emergency fund and you go straight into investing, and then something happens, you lose your job or something breaks on your car or fill in the blank. And now all of a sudden you either have to go into credit card debt, which is terrible,
Right.
or you have to sell investments in a down market. So no matter what stage of life you're in, this liquidity management is a key strategy to keep in mind.
Absolutely.
All right. Last, we have for you all stress testing and scenario analysis. And this is another really fun thing we
Yes.
do in our firm. Both Teresa and myself are certified financial planners. One of our other advisors is a CFP, and our fourth advisor is going through the CFP program. So we are very, very committed to planning and to doing planning with clients. And one of the fun things that we get to do with clients is run different scenarios and show them how different decisions impact their probability of success. We use a model called a Monte Carlo model. At the risk of getting too nerdy on y'all, it is a statistical model that runs lots of different trials and spits out a probability of success. But we can also stress test financial plans, and we do
Mhm.
stress test. So what happens when we hit a big downturn in the market? Notice I said when, not if. It
Not
is
if.
inevitable. Yeah, it is inevitable that it will happen. And hopefully, we are working with our clients for a long period of time and go through multiple down markets with them. So, what happens to your financial plan when we hit a big downturn? Do you still have a high probability of success? And if not, what sorts of levers do we need to pull to increase that probability of success. So these sort of what if scenarios I think are really important. And this is a huge value with working with a financial professional who knows how to stress test portfolios and run those scenarios for you.
Yeah, I mean, even on the planning stress testing is nice. We even have tools that allow us to run historical stress tests just on the investment side, right? We use risk analysis software where we could say, what if we were in the great financial crisis of '08 again? How would this portfolio react in that environment? And just being able to hypothesize, right, about the what ifs is a big part of managing not only your, what I like to call longevity risk, right? Am I going to outlive my money? But also managing the investment risk as well.
Exactly. So there you have it. Those are
Yay.
6 strategies. We did include diversification as one of them, even though
Mm-hmm.
Trevin told us not to talk about diversification. He was like, I got that one. Check that box. I need other strategies. But 6 strategies. And our recommendation here would be not to just implement 1 or 2, but to really consider possibly implementing all, or maybe 5 of the 6, to really build a resilient financial plan for you. So Trevin is going to get a $10 Amazon gift card
Yay,
from Curo.
Trevin.
Yay! Confetti, confetti. So thank you, Trevin, for taking the time to send in your question. We really enjoyed answering it for you. We hope it was helpful. And for those folks out there who have other questions, feel free to shoot those into us. The email address is podcast@curoprivatewealth.com. And if we answer your question like we did Trevin's today, we will also send you an Amazon gift card. It's about to be the holidays. It's about to be Black Friday. So, a $10 Amazon gift card cannot hurt anybody right now. I'm sure Amazon is getting a lot of our money. So please feel free to send in those questions. And then just a friendly reminder before we go into our closing thought that if you enjoyed this episode, you got value out of it, please consider sharing it with a friend, giving us a review, let us know how we're doing and what you enjoy about the podcast. We would really appreciate it. We love hearing from you all. So
Yeah,
please
we
do
get
that.
very excited when we
We
hear
do.
from you.
Exactly. Yeah. Lots of smiley faces go around the office when we get questions and feedback from you all. So keep them coming. All right, Atrisa, closing thought for the day. What do you have for us?
Yep. So this is actually still in line with our A-team catch up. So Anne mentioned at the top of our episode today that we had the pleasure of hearing a keynote from Dr. Paul Sorrell, who is the president of Paul Quinn College that Anne referenced earlier down in Dallas, Texas. And he shared a lot of inspirational thoughts about just leadership in general. One of the things that really stood out to me, because I think it's something that I will call it a challenge, that it's been a challenge that has helped me develop and grow over the time. But one of those things is just being authentically yourself and showing up as who you are in different situations. And I think as a person who is now the leader of a practice of clients that was founded by a person who was nothing like me, right? So we come from very different places and different backgrounds. And I think I have been challenging myself to figure out the best way to show up as who I am, right? Not feel like I have to do it the way he did it, show up for clients in the way that he did it, but to be who I am. I mean, of course, I still want to do a really good job and work very hard, but to do it in my way and in my style. And I think Dr. Sorrell's point where he was unafraid to just do it his own way. I think he even mentioned one of the caveats he gave the college before accepting the position is that you have to be okay with me doing it my way. And it's not going to look like the way you've been used to doing it. I mean, obviously, he cut the football team as one of his first mandates when he showed up. So I just thought that it was a really helpful insight, right? To think about showing up as yourself and the value you bring and not being afraid to do it differently. And of course, it just opens up creativity and problem solving and just solutions, being solutions oriented in general. So that really resonated with me. So I wanted to share it on the podcast today. But don't be afraid to do it your way and to show up authentically as who you are.
Love that. He had so many great
Oh, yeah.
nuggets and just an amazing, such an inspiring story. of also just faith, right? Like he was
Right.
about to
Hmm.
to take over a basketball team and was so excited about that, and then just got this really strong calling to come and really turn this college around that was about to go under, as I mentioned earlier. So just a super inspiring man.
Yeah.
My closing thought is also related to the conference that we were just at, and just the importance of getting out of your office and getting out from under the weeds that we all sometimes have to be in when we're working in our business, in our job, and the importance of taking a step back and working on our business, working on ourselves, networking with other people who are maybe in a similar situation to you or maybe not. But I think there's so many things that we can learn from people, hearing their experiences, hearing the challenges that they have, sharing if we've been in a similar situation, or brainstorming with them. And so I think it's just important that we all step out of the weeds periodically and, zoom out and make sure we're taking time to connect with other people and to share. And I think that that is really powerful. And every time I come back from something like this, a conference or a retreat, I'm always just humbled and inspired, and like my batteries always feel, even though I'm tired, because as you said, we were going nonstop. So I'm like physically a little tired, but I'm just so ready to like kill it next year and to continue to to grow our business and run our business and continue to help our team grow and continue to help our clients grow. And so I think it's just really important to always take a step away.
Yeah, absolutely. Many times you can't see the forest for the trees. So when you get to zoom out and really think about the more higher level things, and even between you and I, we talk all the time, right? We have a standing Monday morning meeting where we're always talking and interacting. And even then, sometimes we're very in the weeds, right? We don't get to think about the vision of the firm and what we want to do from a higher level. So being able to step away and have that time is it's invigorating, right? You come back and you're like, all right, here's what we got to do. And here's our list. And again, it's overwhelming, but I absolutely agree. It definitely recharges you. So it's
Yeah.
important to us that we take those opportunities. I mean, it's hard because we have to be away from our offices and be away from clients, but it's necessary. It's a necessary part of the work that we do.
Yeah. It's an investment.
Yes, absolutely.
It's the way to think about it. So, yeah. All right, y'all. Well, that wraps us for this week. Thanks again for tuning in. Send us your questions, give us those reviews, share, like all the things. Until next week.
Live
I appreciate
richly.
it.